And now we're going to swing back to our previous story where world-renowned linguist and political commentator Noam Chomsky said that the United States international affairs are now run based on, quote, a mafia doctrine, and that the hostilities that Washington has towards Tehran are because Tehran will not bow down to Washington. And we're joined out of Los Angeles to get more on this by Mr. James Morris, editor of America-hijack.com. And now, Mr. Morris, what's your take on this? I mean, your thoughts to Chomsky's claim that the U.S. has it in for Iran because it cannot get Iran to bow down like a mafia boss.
Thank you for having me back on Press TV. You know, the thing is with Noam Chomsky is that he tries to downplay the influence of the Israel lobby. And I was actually the first person to get him to admit that the Jewish neoconservatives, the upper echelon of the Israel lobby in America, had actually pushed for the U.S. to invade Iraq for Israel. He had tried to say that it was the oil companies that had pushed the U.S. to invade Iraq, and that couldn't be further from the truth, because actually the oil companies had wanted to buy the oil from Saddam Hussein instead of invading Iraq to get at it. So when he's saying this about Iran, I kind of am a bit dubious, because he tries to, not mention the Israel lobby influence that we have. That sure, with the Mossadegh situation, with the 1953 coup and all that, there's been a hostility between the U.S. and Iran with the Shah and all that. But the main reason that the U.S. has a problem with Iran is the Israel lobby. And of course, that's AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And I've had it out with Professor Chomsky more than once in person, including at UCLA, how he downplays the influence of not only the neoconservatives, until I got him to admit that they pushed the U.S. into Iraq, but also AIPAC and the rest of the Israel lobby. And when you look at Professor Chomsky, he has been critical of Israel with what it does to brutalize the Palestinians. I give him credit for that. But he's opposed BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And I think that has to do with him growing up in a Zionist household. If I recall correctly, he spoke Hebrew while he was growing up in that same household. So, like I'm saying, until you address the crux of the matter, and that is the Israel lobby influence in America, like I've mentioned, AIPAC and the neoconservatives and the rest of the Israel lobby, to include the Jewish donors like Sheldon Adelson and Haim Saban. And of course, Sheldon Adelson influences the Republicans, and Haim Saban is now influencing Hillary Clinton. We saw her speak at his Brookings Institute recently, and she was hawkish against, various enemies of Israel in the Middle East. So she's like a neocon favorite too. So,
Mr.
like
Morris,
I said, yes.
Chomsky he's not the only person that's saying that in recent decades the U.S. is increasingly getting more bullyish in the international community, on the international platform. And how so? Like, I wanted to get your take on in what ways does the U.S. exert itself over other countries like a, quote, mafia godfather, as Mr. Chomsky said.
Well, let's take an example of what we saw in the Congress earlier today for me, yesterday for you now, with General Petraeus. I mean, General Petraeus was in the Congress. It was a Senate hearing held by the neocon mouthpiece, Senator John McCain, and he basically put forward the neoconservative position to make, quote-unquote, safe enclaves in Syria. Now, that is a known, that's in accord with the Zionist, Israeli, Likudnik, Odujanon neocon plan for the Middle East, which started with Iraq. We saw it unfold in Libya. Now it's unfolding in Syria. It's going on in Yemen. And that has nothing to do with the U.S. being a so-called mafia boss, as Chomsky puts it. That's everything to do with the Israel lobby. I mean, the bottom line is the neoconservatives are the upper echelon of the Israel lobby. We saw from the email exchanges that I had with General Petraeus, that he was basically in cahoots with the neoconservative, the Jewish neoconservative warmonger Max Boot.
We're out of time, Mr. Morris.
Sure.
I apologize. We're out of time. That's Mr. James Morris of America-hijack.com joining us out of Los Angeles.